Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It's time for us to learn a little bit more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, and in this very lesson, we're taking a look at theming fundamentals, things you need to know about how themes work. Stick with me. We'll be on my desktop in just a few. All right. So what is today about? Today is about, no, I'm not going to be pitching and promoting FileMaker Themes, my recent re-release of a site, although you may hear about it, but it's about understanding how themes work in FileMaker so that you can take advantage of them. Because if you don't know how they work, then you really get no advantage at all. And there's all kinds of myths about about how themes work and with regards to their performance and how much of a performance impact they are, where they work in certain areas, in WebDirect versus mobile and what have you. I'm going to give you all the information that I know about theming, the fundamentals of how it works in FileMaker, and try to get you to understand, what's safe to do, what's not safe to do, what you might want to pay attention to, and so forth. And just before we do that, let's take a look at our sponsor.
This video has been brought to you by FileMakerThemes.com. It's a one-stop shop for choosing a theme to apply to your new or existing FileMaker solution. When considering your next move toward advancing the look and feel of your FileMaker solution, don't forget to visit FileMakerThemes.com.
All right, and we're back at it. Okay, so this is video number 2, and every time after video number 1 in the series, which is easy to find, if you found this video as a result of a search, then you can click on the channel icon here on YouTube, and then you'll be taken to my channel, and you'll be able to find a list of the playlists of all of the different series of video. This is series number 4 out of ever since number 1. Number 1 was about the environment. Number 2 was about calculations and fields. Number 3 was about data and structure. And we still have a little bit more to add in the file. And now we're looking at layouts, theming, and designing our solution. If you'd like to follow along in this video, as I open this file right here called Time Track, it's the file that we've been using. We reference FileMaker's database every once in a while. You can get a copy of this database. You're going to find the link in the description of this video, and I suggest that you follow along with these videos. And what I do is I build in the solution, or I build in the features that we talk about as we go along. Now today is a wonderful, nice, cool thing for you as a gift. Is built into this file that you download is a free theme from FileMakerThemes.com. We can find that when we go to the Manage Layouts. So I switch to the Manage and Layouts, and I've expressed this in another video. I'll reference, you can search for it on YouTube. I think it's Layouts, Layout Themes and Design, something. I don't know. It's got a thumbnail of an arrow icon on it. And I explain what I do in terms of how I add a theme to my solution. Now, we're not going to walk through that here because that would be redundant, but long story short, we can see that one of the very first layouts that I put into a FileMaker file is a dedicated layout. In this case, it happens to be tied to a table and some other items, a value list, but it is there for me to centrally manage my theme. Now, what makes this really nice is because it's way too easy when you're theming, as we'll see, or applying your theme to all of your multiple layouts. It's way too easy to actually cause problems or conflicts. So I'm going to select this theme and I'm going to open it up, which I'll need to zoom out and click open here. Now the cool thing is, what I do is I can keep this theme open over here as a reference for what I have available. I can also copy and paste from it, but our primary concern when it comes to a theme is that we want to have one place where we can manage all of the styles, because what happens is if we do it on our layouts where we're designing, or I should say we can do it on the layouts where we are designing, but the problem is we have to know that only one layout that uses the same theme across all layouts is being modified only one at a time. So let's take a look at what I mean. In our solution here, this time track database, we have two user interfaces right now, and this is a super simple database. Your user interface may have 50 layouts. So the two layouts that we have are these right here. We've got the one primary layout that the user interacts with, which is our time interaction layout. Then we just added in the end of the data structure this layout, which is where we manage users. And we still need to add in a little bit going on with this particular layout. We need to do that join table. But essentially, our primary layout is the user adds or basically works with their time, and this layout is going to manage which projects a user has access to. I'm currently logged in as the admin user right here. We can see that the user has been captured. I've logged into the system first time. Go reference a previous video I did in the data and structure where we talk about logging activity and capturing the user if you're interested about this particular aspect. But I can see that I'm assigned to project 1, 3, and we'll give myself 4. So that means over here in my solution, I should be able to see 1, 3, and 4. I do need to make sure they're active. So let's make sure that those are active. It looks like I got a little mess up because of my theme on my nice little effect that I had. We'll have to fix that. But let's make those projects active and make sure that they show up for me. So here's the key with theming. Whenever we're going to use a theme, we really only want to manage and modify styles in one place if we can, or number 2, we want to make sure that we know what is the last layout where a save was made to that theme. And here's why this is important. The individual styles that you have for a given theme apply to all of the layouts that share that theme, but the problem is it only applies to pure styles, not modified styles. And this is a very, very important thing to understand when it comes to FileMaker's themes. So first off, we take a look at this particular theme, or we take a look at how many layouts have a given theme, and I'm going to need to switch those in this file. Easiest way to do that is to go to Manage, Themes, our dialog comes up, and I can see right here at a glance what's going on. My theme from FileMakerThemes.com is Sandstone Parkway with Helvetica New as the font. I have 2 layouts, and the other 10 layouts that I have are using FileMaker's default theme, which is Enlightened. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch all of those. So the easiest way to switch all of your themes, or all of your layouts, and here's the difficulty. If you already have a solution that is styled the way that you want, when you do this process, you're basically wiping everything out and having to start from scratch by applying the styles to all of the elements in your layout, because when you apply a theme to a layout, it wipes everything out. We go into layout mode with Command L. Now, of course, we could use the Manage Layouts here, and we could move individually to each layout. But that's not something that I enjoy doing. There's no bulk way to apply a given theme to all of your layouts. You have to do it one by one, as far as I'm aware. Now, what I like to do the most is to use the keyboard shortcut. On the Macintosh, it is going to be Control with an up arrow and a down arrow, and on Windows, it's probably Control as well. So watch right here, as I hold down the Control, I can really quickly move between all of the layouts. Now, this same key combination of the Control up arrow, down arrow works for moving through records as well. It's very helpful when you're developing in FileMaker. So what I did is I moved to the very first layout of the theme, and now I can see that the startup is not switched right here. So obviously, by switching each theme, I just have to click, 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 and then go to the next one. And that was a command. So I'm basically going to be applying all of these, and if you're really good there, you can see that I don't know why the dialog keeps coming up off screen. Instead of taking the time to click to this layout, I'm holding down, I'm using the Enter key, which is the extended, on an extended keyboard, it's the one all the way over on the 10 keypad. If you've got a Macintosh shorter keyboard, you can hold down the Function key down at the bottom in order to trigger that Enter, and just cycle through all of these. I think, did that not change? Child time, that one didn't change for some reason. But that's ultimately the first thing that I'm going to do, is get it so that all of these layouts are going to be set to this one particular theme. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the rest of that. It's something that I do so that I know that all of my layouts have the same theme. Now I do need to apply it to this one particular layout. It's my second of my 2 primary user interface layouts. And the reason that I do that, the reason that I switch all of my layouts is just out of pure, I like to have things clean. I like to make it such that the themes dialog here really only contains themes that I'm interested and using in my solution. I want to be able to select this enlightened and delete it. I want to get it out of my file. And I would be able to click delete here, but I can't delete it until all layouts don't have any associations to this theme. In other words, it makes sense. FileMaker is not going to let me remove a theme if a layout is using it. So I cycle through all of the layouts and do that. And again, I'm not going to bore you with that process. I think you'll get that. All right, so let's see, where's my time track? There's time track 2 and time track 1. All right, so this is the next thing that I do in a theme. Once I've got my theme, I don't know what I'm calling it over here, my theme core, repository, whatever it is, my one-stop shop where I manage my theme. The whole fundamental key to theming, hence the title of this video, is that themes that layouts that share the same theme get the benefit of updated styles only if those styles have not been overridden. So what do we mean? Here's what we mean in this. We go into layout mode on this time track database. I click this button of start. We'll zoom out so we can see the inspector and move that on screen. I select the styles of all of the different options that are possible in this particular theme. There's a really good number of them. I am going to choose to make this button primary 1. I'm going to select my header here and color it part color 1. This isn't these probably aren't the colors I'll end up choosing, but I'm going to do the same thing over on the other layout. Go into layout mode there. And it's using the same theme, so I'll have the same things accessible here. I need a button, so I will just copy one from here, just because I don't have a button over here yet. We'll call this something like, I don't know, remove all, just a simple button. Remember, anytime that you copy a button, if you've copied a button that has a script, please take the time to do this. Set it to a do nothing, because you will click that button inevitably while you're testing and it will do something that you don't expect, and it's in a different context, and it'll run a script that could mess things up just out of habit. If you copy buttons from your user interface, always reassign those. So, fundamental. This is the number one lesson that we take away, or the number one thing we take away from this video. A style that has overrides does not get the benefit of being able to be applied to all layouts. So here's the trick. And this is it's sort of a confusing thing about FileMaker when we look at it this way. When we look at the way that styles and themes work, we can see them in 2 places. We can see them here in Styles, and we can also see them here in the Appearance tab. Most of the time we're working with the Appearance tab because we're changing and adjusting styles. So the biggest difficulty that we have here is when this window is open and we're working on this layout. This layout has the same theme as this layout right here. As soon as I make any change to this object, say I want this particular button to be bold now, and I know the keyboard command for that, so I'll just make it. It's Command-Shift-B, but it would be down here. I would basically select bold. I've now made an override to this style. This style was named, or is named, Button Primary 1, but the style is of a font that is plain or normal. It is not a bold style. So we can always see this red arrow right here. And for anybody who's getting started with FileMaker, I always have this saying that I tell people in my theming courses that I've taught prior: red, you're dead. It's a saying that they say when you're shooting guns, I guess, that when the little switch is out and if it shows red, that means that you're ready to fire. Same thing in FileMaker. If it's red, it doesn't mean you're dead, but it does mean that this style now, this object has an override, and FileMaker won't do the changes to it to all of our layouts, meaning it won't flow through all of our layouts. Let's change the color on this. Let's change it to red, for example. So now we need to see the effect or the reason why we have a central layout where we can control all of our styles. Because if I go into layout mode here, and this primary button, if I want it to be bold and I want it to flow to all of my layouts where this is now going to be a bolded version, which I'll make it bold, what I have is I've created a conflicting situation. I have this object, which is called a primary button 1. I can see because of the asterisk and the red that it has an override, meaning it's had a change made to it. Over here, likewise, I have a change that has been made to it. Now, when I come back to my theme, my central repository where I've stored all of my objects, if I save this change to this current style, meaning I want all button primary 1 to be bold, and I now get the red triangle right here on the whole of the theme, and it says save, rename, or revert a theme. If I choose to save the changes to this theme, and let's get this on screen so that we can see what's going on, we are looking at this button right here, and we are looking at this button right here. These two layouts share this same theme. They all three share the same theme. When I choose to save changes to theme, what FileMaker says is it says, okay, there are a number of layouts using this theme. For all of the layouts that are using this theme, as long as the objects for this theme have not been changed, I will apply the changes that you've made here on this one layout to all other layouts. So we save the changes to the theme, and what we notice that happened is this button right here got those changes. It received the changes of the bold because this object had not had any overrides applied to it. But this object didn't get those benefits. It had overrides, which means every time that you leave an object with this little red triangle, that means that it doesn't get the benefit to get the theme across the board. Now here comes the additional problem. Because we had made the change here on this layout, and this layout shares the same theme as all the other layouts, if I do the same process here, the way that it works is the last save to the theme wins. And if I do that here, if I go save changes to current style, and I save the changes to the theme, guess what happened to not only my reference layout, but all other layouts? I basically just said, all primary button 1s, you're now red. And I just messed up my whole colors. It was not what I wanted to have happen. So when it comes to our theming fundamentals, that's the primary reason that I put in one central layout all of my styles, and I attempt, when I am theming my whole solution, I attempt to manage them all within this particular layout. Now that all of these are saved, and I know that, and you can always see this by going to each layout and looking in the inspector and just taking a quick glance right here. This is the only indication that we get in all of FileMaker that the layout that you're looking at has not been saved is this icon right there, and the little star, which in this case, it doesn't even show the star because the text is so long. Bummer. So I have to switch to this layout and check for this item right here. Your goal is to have all of your layouts that share the same theme to not be red, and to know that when you're going to save a change to a given object, there's only one layout that you're working on. So I can go back over to my primary repository here, and I can make this the color that it needs to be. I think it is, no, it's not that dark color. It's that one right there. And I don't think it messed up the hover and pressed. One of the benefits that you get over at FileMakerThemes.com, you don't have to take the time to set all of those styles. I can now take the opportunity to save the changes to my style and then save the changes to the theme, and it will update all of those buttons. And you can see it came to all of those. In fact, it was the darker version. Let's go ahead and switch it to that darker version right there. So I save the changes and I save the theme. So what about adding new styles? Well, you are designing your layout as you're working on that layout. I'm not working in my central theme management area. I'm designing my layout over here when I'm working on my project. So how do we deal with that? That's pretty easy. As long as when I'm working, I know that all of my layouts, none of them have any changes, and there's no red arrows in any of those layouts, then I will work on the one area. So for example, when we go into browse mode here, I have a new object that I want to style. It doesn't fit any of my template boilerplate styles from the FileMaker themes file. So I'm going to use those to style the rest of my solution, but I'm also going to be adding my own style. So this is what I do. I'm going to go into layout mode and I'm going to select my object. I'm going to select right here. Now I could choose a couple of different ways. If I want it to match my theme, I can choose one of my existing styles as the starting point. Now in this theme, in the FileMaker themes file, I know as I scroll down, I have a preset number of fonts that I happen to use, and they all are hinged around this one setting of font normal. And then from font normal, I go up for font bigger, and then down I go for font smaller. So I can choose to set to one of those boilerplate styles and then modify and save that new style, or I can just save a new style. Now this right here we talked about in the video yesterday. This is not an actual style that you can do with all of this font. It is the first character. We learned this at the end of the video from yesterday. The first character defines what the rest of the text is going to look like with a merge field. So when I select the style here, which I'm going to choose to go, rather than just choosing to create a new style, which again, most of the time we're in the Appearance tab, rather than just choosing right here and clicking Save as New Style, I'm going to start with one of my font styles because those are already at preset sizes that I typically want to use in this theme. I could just use this arbitrary size, but I know that it doesn't necessarily match my theme that I'm now using. So I'll choose probably font bigger or font big. Let's go with, I'll go with font biggest in this particular case, and I may want it a little bit bigger than that. We can see that as I apply the style, it does retain the smaller portion of the duration in here, but it changed the larger version. So now there's a couple things I need to make, and that's all of my tweaks to this style. Now the style is still going to be set to font biggest, but as I modify and change this, I'm changing it into what I want the new style to be. So I do not want to save it as font biggest. That's a key thing. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to close that. I'm going to align to the right, which is what I want to have happen. I know that I also want it to be bold, and that is pretty much the tweak that I want now. So now that I can see that the style of font biggest has been modified, now is when I choose Save as New Style. Now here's the one thing I don't like about FileMaker, and I've done this on accident. When you're really churning through your theme, it is so easy to just select this first one, forget what you're doing, and accidentally save it. And what you've done then is you've overridden your template style, and you have to sort of think, oh crud, what did I add? Well, hopefully the things that you add, you can just take off. Like in this case, I would have to go from right alignment back to left alignment and take off the bold, save it back as font biggest, and then apply the styles that I want. But no matter what changes I'm going to make, because I'm working here in my user interface, I still have to keep in the back of my mind, this is the layout where modifications are being made. I cannot leave this layout until I have saved the changes to the theme. You have to go all the way through the process. Otherwise, you end up with multiple layouts with multiple different changes, and you're completely obviating the whole advantage of having a central theme that applies to your whole solution. So in this case, I choose Save as New Style. And in this one, now is when I get to make the decision, is this an enhancement of font biggest? Where normally, if it is, I would do font biggest, and I would apply the additional attributes. I would say, for example, because it is right aligned, right strong, or right bold. And that would be a common style that I would use somewhere else. And this may be an approach that I would take. But when I'm designing a FileMaker solution, there are also times where I take the opportunity to clearly identify the object. Instead of having a general name, in this particular case, if it's very specific to the use in this application, meaning I might have multiple layouts where the duration is shown, I now want to just give it the name of the area, the functional use. So I may do something like this, time duration. And I will save it as that file. Now again, here is what we focus on. We follow it all the way through. The key takeaway, again, is all layouts that share the same theme, any modifications made to those layouts, we do not leave the layout unless we have saved the changes to the theme, because we never, ever, ever want to have multiple layouts where those themes have different styles that have been changed. Red, you're dead. You completely don't get the benefit of styling. So now that I've made the save to this particular object of duration, let's remember that you can always rename a style. And this is part of theming when you're enhancing your theme or creating your own theme from scratch. You're always going to evolve things. So right now I've applied a very specific name to this style of time duration. If down the road when I'm developing this solution, I think to myself, this style would look good here, but I'm applying it to an object that has nothing to do with the time duration. Well, that's then the time to rename that style on that layout. So if that didn't work in this case, I would rename the style, which it came up somewhere off screen there or out of view. And instead of calling this time duration, I might go back to my naming of font biggest, in this case, right strong. Because that's just going to make more sense, and I just have to now mentally remember, well, the duration is using that style. And of course, I can always look at it right here by seeing that it is font biggest right strong. But here we go. This is the one thing that new FileMaker learners do. They just go and apply styles, make all the little minor tweaks and changes they want to objects, but they never follow through on the process, which is save the style, save the theme. Save the style, save the theme. So now the only thing that I would do is I will copy this to my reference layout. So I'll copy this, go over to my reference layout. If there's not already a column here, I will create a new column. It's simply a matter of selecting the reference layout, dragging it out, dragging this over, and putting more styles or putting whatever it is where it's going to be used. Because I saved the theme in the layout where I was working, that means that this layout has that object. So when I paste it, I'm going to have that. It's shared across all layouts that have the same theme. So there it is, font biggest right strong. So I'll double click here and put the name of the style itself, because it's so cool to be able to see that right off the bat. Font bug biggest right strong. And it is a good thing for these to be wrapped for you to be able to see the spacing between. In an upcoming video, we'll take a look at all of the different settings that I set in a theme and how I control color and how I set colors and do all kinds of things when I'm designing my styles. But this is the fundamentals that before we even go into the design process, this is what I do, because we now have this one central area where we can see all of the styles that are used in all of the different layouts. If you don't have this particular layout and you have all of your styles spread out across all of your layouts, it's very likely, in fact, it's inevitable, and you will end up doing this, you will end up creating duplicate styles. And you will name them things differently based on when you create the style. So I may have created time duration, and then on some other layout where the duration time is not showing, I'll end up creating font biggest right strong. And they're almost exactly the same. And the whole goal is to just have one single style so that it flows throughout the whole solution. So there's one other thing I'm going to leave you with in this video. And that is the concern of What's the performance impact? Because once you get into the world of advanced FileMaker development, and you're really starting to worry about, well, how much impact does the styles that I'm using, and how much does all of this impact my solution? While I won't be able to get into it super in depth, I can say this: these few things. Out of all of the objects in FileMaker, the heaviest object with regards to styles is a tab panel. Number 2 is probably a slider. Number 3 may be your button bar. Then number 4 is probably going to be your popover, and from there you're going to have buttons, fields, and web viewers and charts. That's just in terms of the total amount of CSS that's required in order to have those objects. So clearly, if you have a solution and that solution is going to be accessed across the network using the WAN, and you have tab panel embedded within tab panel embedded within tab panel, that's going to have more CSS data than if you have a popover with a tab panel, because simply you have more CSS being used in order to render those objects. Likewise, the next question with regards to performance is, as we go into layout mode, the inspector. The total number of styles. Now, you can always see the total number of styles by clicking on the Show All and then just simply scrolling through the list. Now, one of the things you'll find in the FileMakerThemes.com themes is that there's a pretty long list, because what I'm offering is I'm attempting to offer all of the different variations for objects that you might want to use when you're styling. Let's take a look at this. What I'm talking about is, in this theme, there are 5 colors that are chosen. I may not use all 5 colors when I'm designing my solution. Maybe I only want to use the first 2, color 1 and color 2, and I never end up using 3, 4, and 5. We ask the question, what's the performance hit that we're taking by keeping the styles in this particular file? Because when it comes to WebDirect is transferring, as far as I'm aware, a large style sheet that includes all of the styles, even styles that you're not necessarily using. But we ask the question, how much of the style is different between the styles? Now, in this case, this particular strip, when we look at this, let's see where it is here, this color dark with the hex value versus the color dark 2, there's only one difference between these two objects, and that is, when we look at the object, the fill color itself. That's the only one attribute. Now, the number of attributes that are different between styles adds to the amount of CSS. So yes, if I had 100 different styles, and then I had 100 different variations of those 100 different styles, but I wasn't using all of them, I'm carrying a little bit more weight in terms of the data that's transferred, but we have to put this in perspective. What we're really talking about is a small amount of text. The amount of text that this comes across in terms of its delivery is within kilobytes, within hundreds of kilobytes. You're not talking about a megabyte. You're not talking about multiple megabytes. You're not even talking about a gigabyte. In fact, all of the things that are going to make your database perform worse is bad data structure and heavy data. The last thing that I probably worry about is the total number of styles that I have in my theme. The theme itself, especially when those styles are only very slight differences, is not that much. It's a very lightweight transfer in terms of what goes across the WAN. So that's something to think about. I don't worry too much about adding too many styles. Some developers, they may get freaked out about that, and they don't. I'm telling you that you don't really have to. What you can pay attention to more is how many times do you use heavy objects versus light objects. And if you can take off some of the heavy objects, and this really only applies to WebDirect. If it's FileMaker Go or it's FileMaker desktop client over the WAN, that's your second biggest consideration. WebDirect is your first in terms of performance. Then it's the desktop across the WAN, but then desktop and mobile across a local network, no problem. It's super fast. A local file on a device on mobile or local file on a desktop, that connects to a remotely hosted file, this is advanced development called the separation model, then you don't even have to worry because all the style is already in the file right there on the device when they open it up. It's not even a consideration. So here is the last thing to consider about themes. And it's something that I actually wasn't aware of in the case of FileMaker 15 and 14. I'm working in FileMaker 16 here. It used to have 51 themes, a large collection of themes. In fact, as you move a file forward, if you just opened it and created it in FileMaker 13, 14, or 15, and you use some of those themes, the question is, why did FileMaker remove so many of those themes for FileMaker 16? Well, FileMaker's trying to advance in so many different areas. The user interface is one that sort of gets left behind. We know this because FileMaker, because it uses CSS has vastly more power to style objects than FileMaker can expose. So they have to dedicate R&D budget towards exposing that capability within the inspector. They can't focus completely on the user interface, although I'd love them to, in order to expose all of the different variable controls. Plus, because of how objects are maintained or how they're structured with regards to their HTML behind the scenes structure for WebDirect, etc., they have to take certain things into consideration, and some styles just can't be exposed. But the biggest reason that I know of, and this again is a guess, as to why FileMaker removed so many themes, if it's a burning question for you, for FileMaker 16, it was because as they were advancing WebDirect, they couldn't optimize for certain objects. For example, button bars, in particular, when those button bars have a, where'd it go? It's a radius, is what I'm looking for. I don't know where, there, the corner radius. Oh, this is a custom object. That's why it's not showing, Matt. I custom hacked this object in order to show these rounded corners for what's going on. Let's select a regular button bar right there. Corners. For some reason, FileMaker, if you look at all of their themes and you go through all of the 8 current themes that FileMaker has available in FileMaker 16, and I don't know what's coming out in 17, if you look at the button bars on all of those themes, you'll notice that none of them have rounded corner radius on the button bar objects. So when the button bar object was added, for some reason, they didn't have or couldn't take the time to make rounded corner button bars work on WebDirect. So I think their solution was, again, it's a guess, okay, we just have to get rid of all themes that have rounded corner button bars because they don't work in WebDirect, and we'll just add themes that allow us to have square button bars. Now, that's just my guess, but you can test this yourself. Go select and apply each of FileMaker's themes and look at all of their button bars. If I switched this to enlightened, luminous, sophisticated, tranquil, vibrant, you will see that all of those button bar objects have square corners, and as soon as you make them rounded and go try to look at it on WebDirect, they won't render. They will render really funky. And so that's my guess, and it's just something to be aware of when it comes to theming. If you are theming for WebDirect, you're going to need to go with squarish button bars. So that means on this particular theme, I would select all of these, and in one fell swoop, I would just set all of their corner radius to a 0 and apply that. It would apply, but just because you've made the change, remember, you're going to have to select the object. Red or dead, you're going to have to save the change to this style and do it for each one of these, then save the theme itself. Never leave a layout with a red triangle on that theme. That's our takeaway for today. All right, so we are 8 minutes over my 30 minutes, and hopefully I've given you a lot of good information about working here within FileMaker. And you enjoy the free theme from FileMakerThemes.com. Remember, anytime that you're working on a new project, revising a project, if you don't want to have to style all of these and take the time to add the colors, add all the individual styles, check out FileMakerThemes.com. It's a great place to get started, especially if you can pass along the billing to the client and just charge them for theming services. All right, let's take a look and see if we got any comments in today's video. I'll switch over to that and load those up right there. All right, so we've got a number. I've got our hellos. And we go back to this question. When talking about the theme layout, am I right in saying there would be a layout for each theme, form theme, list theme, print theme? No. Nathan, in this particular situation, what our goal is to have one theme that is used across all layouts for all different view variations. Form view, list view, what have you. Ideally, by having one theme, any changes to that one theme pervasively flows to all layouts that use that one theme. Now, it is possible to have more than one theme if your solution is big enough where it warrants having that separate theme. Here's a good example. Let's take a look at this. We'll switch over back to our solution and think about this. When I click on the change theme here, what's interesting to note is that we have an enlightened print, and we have an enlightened touch. So these three themes, all named within the same name, they serve three different purposes. This primary theme of enlightened is our desktop version of a theme. Our enlightened touch is for our mobile version of the theme. Our enlightened print works for print output of what we're going to do. Now, would I do this? I don't prefer to do this. FileMaker sample files, they include multiple layouts. In fact, they include a desktop version, a iPad version, and an iPhone version. That's way too many layouts for me to manage in a FileMaker solution. We'll talk about this in an upcoming video. I try to have just one layout and have it be hybrid. We'll talk about it when we talk about sizing our layouts and working with the grid. If I can have a hybrid layout that'll work good on iPad and on desktop, then I'll choose to have that as my primary desktop, mobile, iPad hybrid layout. If I am then going to have an iPhone layout, then I'll go to the second. So I won't do what FileMaker does by having the three in their sample files. But I will attempt to do this all within one theme. I'm going to have one user interface theme, and it's going to be used for all of the views, for my iPhone layouts if I create those, and for my hybrid iPad, or I'll call it tablet desktop layouts. But if I do have a database that has a lot of output, rather than commingling a print or a PDF output, I do like the idea of creating a print theme. And that's just basically a more lightweight theme that's going to have just the basic things that I need for printing. And by doing that, when I'm designing those print forms, I really don't have to look at all of the different styles that I have in my user interface theme. Because in my user interface theme, of course, I'm going to have tons of different styles. And a lightweight print theme just gives me a smaller selection to choose from. And since it has nothing to do with UI, printing is separate, that for me is a logical distinction between the two. So good question. Thank you very much for that. And hopefully I answered that one well. Let's take a look, see if we've got another one. Too bad layouts, i.e. screen forms reports, are not separate from table construct. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that when they implemented the themes, they made a good choice with regards to choosing CSS. Awesome on choosing the standards that are out there. But the implementation is, we don't have true cascading, and in some situations you will hit objects that you will notice you'll get some funky artifacts, and that's because everything starts from a base style. In fact, this is good to know. Theming fundamental, when we look at our theme, in FileMaker, FileMaker has to have a default style. That is why here on this theme from FileMaker Themes, this first column outside of choosing colors is all defaults. And when we select on each of these, you will notice that each of them is named default right here. Default, 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 default. So the way that works is FileMaker has one absolute default for all fields that define some attributes. Then it has a default for each given object. So this is a edit box. This is a drop-down list. Select on this as you go through the file, and you can see in this column, what I have is one of each unique FileMaker object, and each of those objects is set to its default. Now, if you make some changes to a default, say for example, this button right here, the default button transfers or passes some of its characteristics to any other button that you create after that. And it's only if that button that has spawned off of the default, if it has some overrides that override what the defaults are set at, that's when those overrides start to come into play. So what I mean by this is, if I selected this button, and if I made a change to the font or the text in some fashion, if these buttons, which are children that have spawned off of the default, if they have not had any changes made specifically to that particular attribute, let's again say the font or the style, what happens is when I style the default, that does cascade through to any other object that spawned or originated from the default, which is pretty much all objects. So that's another good thing to know about how FileMaker works. It has to have something that it starts at as the starting point for all objects, and that in FileMaker language is default. And you can't get rid of defaults. You notice that when we zoom in right here, I cannot delete a default style. Every single object must have a default, but then every object that you create after that inherits from the default, but you can override settings that are on the default. Good question. We got some good questions for this video. In fact, it's probably going to make it go a little long. All right, shadows could be, there we go. That's another good comment from Media Sandbox. So since we're into it, might as well mention it. Something to know about. That's why you're here learning about FileMaker. There is one thing that FileMaker currently does not transfer over to mobile. And that is, I'll just go ahead and hack this particular field. These two objects right here, outer shadow and inner shadow effects, do not, when they first released FileMaker Mobile, they did not, the shadows were very costly. So it's cool that currently our standard is a flat design in the world of iOS taking over the world, or material design, Android sort of following iOS. Flat design is here, and it's cool, but I don't think it's going to stay forever. Gradients are what give us depth in terms of life. We'll take about a look at that in an upcoming video. But these two options, and as we scroll all the way over, and we have right here, these two gradients, they do perform, they're a little hard to actually transfer, and I can tell you why. I might as well do it here really quickly. Here is why. FileMaker has to chop this object up into multiple different segments. This object it does not have to chop up as many times. In this object, in order to render, well, we should choose a gradient. Let's imagine this is a gradient. If this was a gradient starting from a lighter color going to a darker color, FileMaker really only has to have one slice in order to render this across the whole distance. Whereas with this object, FileMaker has to have more than just one slice. It has to have this corner, it has to have this corner, this corner, this corner, and a slice that goes across right here, and I think maybe even a slice that goes across where it actually slices the top corner. So it has a lot more going on when you've got rounded edges with gradients. So those are performance considerations, but again, this all boils down to, I would approach data first before you worry about that. I wouldn't not use rounded, cornered, gradient button bars because of that knowledge. I would use it, attempt to solve performance impacts in other ways first, and then consider the user interface the last area with regards to using those objects. Good comment there on that particular item. Let's see, we've only got a few more questions. Excellent. Question, since I have bad vision, can I change the font attributes of Scriptmaker? Please say no, you cannot. Hey, as a developer, this is something we have been begging for a long time. In the rest of the coding world, all of your IDEs, you can custom configure an integrated development environment to do whatever you want to do and look however you want to do. FileMaker, we are stuck with whatever font they choose within the calculation dialog box and within the script. They just haven't really given that much love to the actual development environment itself, allowing us to choose a different font, allowing us to choose a different size of font in particular. It is pretty much hard-coded into FileMaker. Back in the day, you could hack FileMaker to show and use a different font, but you cannot. If you're on Macintosh, there may be a little bit of hope with the Monkey Bread plugin. I believe it does allow you to tweak and only on Macintosh what font is used when it renders those windows. And what happens is FileMaker is going to render it, and then the Monkey Bread plugin steps in and says, no, I want to show this, and it tells the operating system, hey, show this window as a different font with a different size. And I just haven't used that. So sorry about that, Jean-Pierre. Just a downside of that. I have found scrolling through styles, sometimes the scroll bar gets stuck if the list of styles are too long and the theme style portal scrolls up so that the theme name goes above the viewer. Yeah, I have noticed, I haven't hit that exact issue, but I do know that there are some issues that when it comes to scrolling and theming and things like this, I'm having a heck of a time with the preview dialog box. I don't know anything specific with regards to this, Nathan, but I do know that there are occasionally issues. And again, Media Sandbox mentions, yes, anytime we've got gradients and anytime we put them on funky angles and do all kinds of weird things, they will come with a performance impact. We will take a look at adding a lot of different things, images, icons. What are the best ways to do that? All kinds of stuff. I could talk for 5 hours just starting from right now on all of this stuff, but I don't think most everybody could watch for 5 hours. We're already at 50 minutes, and I think that's going to give us a wrap for this video. So, as always, you're welcome to check out FileMakerMagazine.com. There's more content there. I'm putting it out weekly, and of course, you can subscribe here on YouTube and get notified. Mobile app's really cool for that whenever I'm going to do these live if you want to check in. Otherwise, you can always watch them after the fact. And the next video in this series will come up right here. So until next time, much luck and happy file making.